The twin suns of Kethra burned bright above the endless red dunes, casting long shadows across the desert planet. Nothing moved on the surface except the wind that shifted the sand into new patterns. To any traveler passing by, this world looked dead and empty. They would be wrong. Deep beneath the crimson sand, a vast city sparkled with crystal light. The caverns stretched for miles underground, carved from living rock and decorated with precious gems that glowed with their own inner fire. This was the home of House Rukin, the last dragon family on Kethra. Deho stood on his favorite balcony, looking down at the great hall below. His bronze scales caught the crystal light and threw it back in warm golden patterns across the stone walls. At over 300 years old, he was still considered young for a dragon, but he carried the wisdom of his ancestors in his deep amber eyes. The great dragon stretched his wings, feeling the muscles pull pleasantly after his morning flight through the upper caverns. His wingspan was enormous, nearly 60 feet from tip to tip, but he moved with careful grace in the underground spaces his family called home. Below him, his mate So-Min tended to the healing gardens. Her silver scales shimmered like starlight as she moved between the rows of magical plants. She hummed an ancient dragon song while her claws gently touched each flower and herb. Where she walked, the plants grew stronger and brighter. So-Min had always been the heart of their family. While Deho made the hard decisions that kept them safe, she made sure their home remained a place of joy and peace. Her healing magic was stronger than any dragon he had ever known, and her wisdom in matters of the heart surpassed even the oldest dragons. Their 3 children played in the central courtyard, their young voices echoing off the crystal walls. Yunbai, their eldest daughter, practiced her combat forms with deadly precision. Her red scales blazed like fire as she moved through the ancient fighting patterns. At 25 years old, she was fierce and proud, always ready to defend her family. Eun-Bai spun through the air, her wings creating small whirlwinds as she landed in perfect attack position. She had inherited her father's size and her mother's grace, making her a formidable warrior even by dragon standards. Her golden eyes burned with inner fire as she finished her practice routine. Their middle child, Taeyang, sat surrounded by floating books and crystal tablets. His golden scales seemed to glow brighter when he was deep in study, which was most of the time. At 20 years old, he had already mastered more ancient knowledge than dragons twice his age. Taeyang's mind worked like a vast library, storing every piece of information he encountered. He could recite the complete history of 17 different star systems and explain the magical properties of every crystal in their city. His curiosity about the world beyond their home sometimes worried his parents. The youngest, Jinwoo, was only 15 and still full of boundless energy. His blue scales sparkled like sapphires as he darted between his siblings, trying to get them to play with him. He was smaller than the others but made up for it with speed and cleverness. Jinwoo had always been different from his brother and sister. While Yunbai trained for war and Taeyang studied ancient texts, Jinwoo dreamed of adventure and exploration. He often snuck up to the upper levels of their city, as close to the surface as he dared to go. Deho watched his family with deep contentment. For 300 years, House Rukin had lived in perfect safety beneath the dunes. The ancient protection spells woven by his great-grandfather still held strong. No scanner could detect them. No enemy could find them. The dragon patriarch remembered the stories his own father had told him. Long ago, their people had lived openly on many worlds, sharing their wisdom and strength with other races. But war had come, as it always did. The dragons had been hunted almost to extinction by enemies who feared their power. The survivors had gone into hiding, each family finding their own secret refuge. Some had fled to the edges of the galaxy, others had hidden in plain sight on busy trade worlds. House Rukin had chosen the deep desert, where the harsh environment would discourage visitors and the sand would hide their presence. The protection had worked perfectly. While other dragon families had been discovered and destroyed over the centuries, House Rukin remained safe and hidden. Their underground city had grown more beautiful with each passing year, a testament to dragon craftsmanship and magic. But safety came with a price. They were alone, cut off from their own kind and from the wider galaxy. Sometimes Daeho wondered if any other dragon families had survived. Sometimes he dreamed of the day when dragons could once again fly freely under open skies. A soft chime echoed through the caverns, the sound of the evening meal being prepared. Somin's voice carried clearly through the crystal chambers, calling her family to gather. It was one of their oldest traditions. Sharing food and stories at the end of each day, the family gathered around the great table in their dining hall. The crystal walls showed images of the surface world above, captured by magical sensors hidden in the sand. Tonight the display showed the beautiful double sunset, painting the dunes in shades of orange and purple. Jin Woo chatted excitedly about a new passage he had discovered in the lower levels. Taeyang shared interesting facts from his latest research. Yunbai demonstrated a new fighting technique she had perfected. Somin listened to each of them with loving attention while Daeho felt his heart swell with pride. This was what he protected. This peace, this joy, this perfect family moment. The galaxy above might rage with war and chaos, but here in their crystal sanctuary, love and safety reigned supreme. As the family finished their meal and prepared for sleep, none of them knew that tomorrow would bring visitors from the surface world. None of them suspected that their 3 centuries of perfect isolation were about to end forever. The ancient protection spells hummed quietly in the walls around them, as they had for so many years. But even the strongest magic could not hold back destiny forever. Change was coming to House Rukin, whether they wanted it or not. Above them, the desert wind whispered across the dunes, carrying the scent of distant stars and the promise of adventure. The morning started like any other in the crystal caverns below the dunes. Daeho was reviewing the ancient protection spells that kept their city hidden when the first alarm crystal began to glow. Its soft blue light pulsed in rhythm with danger. Approaching from above, Taeyang looked up from his books, his golden scales darkening with concern. The alarm crystal had not glowed in over 50 years. The last time was when a merchant ship had crashed nearby, and they had waited 3 days for the wreckage to be cleared by scavengers. So Min emerged from her healing gardens, her silver scales shimmering with worry. She moved quickly to the main viewing chamber where magical displays showed the desert surface above their home. What she saw made her gasp with surprise. A large ship was falling through the red sky, trailing smoke and fire. It was clearly damaged and losing altitude fast. Behind it, 3 smaller black ships gave chase, firing bright energy beams that lit up the desert air like deadly lightning. The falling ship was unlike anything the dragons had seen before. Its hull was white and blue with strange markings along the sides. The design was sleek but practical, built for long journeys through space rather than combat. Whoever was flying it was fighting for their lives. Daeho arrived at the viewing chamber just as the damaged ship struck the sand only 2 miles from their hidden entrance. The impact sent up a massive cloud of red dust that blocked their view. For several minutes, when it cleared, they could see people climbing out of the wreckage. They were humans, small and fragile-looking compared to dragons, but moving with determination despite their injuries. There were perhaps 20 of them, helping the wounded and gathering supplies from their crashed vessel. Their leader was a tall man with kind eyes, who kept checking on his people while scanning the sky for more danger. The black ship circled overhead like hungry predators. These craft were different from the human vessel, all sharp angles and dark metal that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Strange symbols glowed red along their hulls and their weapons charged with an ominous humming sound. Eun-by watched the scene with growing anger. Her red scales brightened as her warrior instincts responded to the obvious threat. She could see that the black ships were preparing to attack the helpless humans on the ground. It would be a massacre. Jinwoo appeared beside his sister, having climbed up from the lower levels when he heard the commotion. His blue scales were almost electric with excitement as he watched the first aliens his family had encountered in his entire lifetime. The youngest dragon had always dreamed of meeting beings from other worlds. He had read every book about humans and other races that Taeyang could find in the ancient archives. Now real humans were right above them, in terrible danger and needing help. The black ships began their attack run. Diving toward the crash site with weapons blazing, the humans scattered, seeking what little cover they could find among the dunes. Their leader, the tall man with kind eyes, stayed in the open trying to coordinate their desperate defense. Captain Hansu of the colony ship Defiance knew his people were doomed. They had been running from the void swarm for weeks, jumping from system to system as their fuel ran low and their ship fell apart. This desert planet had seemed like their last chance for refuge. His tactical officer Mi Young crouched beside a piece of wreckage, her scanner detecting strange energy readings from beneath the sand. The readings were massive, indicating some kind of advanced technology hidden below ground. But there was no time to investigate with death raining down from above. The void swarm patrol ships began their final attack approach. These mechanical hunters had been pursuing the human refugees across half the galaxy, determined to eliminate every organic life form they encountered. Their programming was simple and deadly: consume all biological matter. Jinwoo watched in horror as energy beams struck the sand around the running humans. One beam hit close to a small group, including what looked like a human child, and the young dragon's heart clenched with sympathetic pain. Without thinking, without permission, without considering the 300 years of careful isolation his family had maintained, Jinwoo spread his wings and launched himself toward the surface. His blue scales blazed with determined light as he burst through the concealed entrance and into the bright desert air. The humans stopped running and stared in amazement as a sapphire blue dragon erupted from the sand like a living jewel. Jinwoo roared his challenge to the black ships, a sound that echoed across the dunes and made the very air tremble with power. The void swarm ships hesitated for a crucial moment, their scanning systems struggling to process this unexpected development. Dragons were supposed to be extinct, wiped out centuries ago during the Great Purges. Yet here was one, very much alive and very angry. Jinwoo breathed fire at the nearest black ship, his flames burning far hotter than any normal fire. The advanced metals of the void swarm craft began to melt under the assault, and the ship wobbled in the air before crashing into a distant dune. The remaining two ships turned their weapons on the young dragon, but Jinwoo was fast and agile. He dodged their beams while herding the humans toward the concealed entrance to his family city. His roars continued to echo across the desert, partly from battle fury and partly from the joy of finally flying under open sky. Captain Hyunsu stared at the magnificent creature protecting his people. He had heard legends of dragons, ancient stories passed down through human space colonies. But seeing one in reality was beyond his wildest imagination. The dragon was beautiful and terrible, graceful and powerful, clearly intelligent and choosing. To help them below ground, Daeho felt his carefully ordered world crumbling around him. His youngest son had just revealed their existence to strangers and enemies alike. 3 centuries of perfect secrecy were gone in moments. Yet, as he watched Jinwoo fight to protect the helpless humans, the old dragon felt something stir in. His heart, that had been sleeping for far too long, the ancient protective instincts of his people were awakening. Dragons had once been guardians and teachers, protectors of the weak and defenders of justice. Perhaps it was time to remember what they truly were, rather than what they had been forced to become. The great hall of House Rukin had never hosted guests before. 20 injured humans sat on crystal benches while Somin moved among them with her healing magic. Her silver scales glowed softly as she touched each wounded person, mending broken bones and closing cuts with gentle care. Captain Hyunsu watched in amazement as his tactical officer, Mi-young's burned arm healed completely under the dragon's touch. The pain lines around Mi-young's eyes faded away and she flexed her fingers with wonder. No human medical technology could work so quickly or completely. Daeho stood at the far end of the hall, his bronze scales dark with anger, his amber eyes fixed on his youngest son with disappointment that cut deeper than any blade. Jinwoo huddled near the entrance, his usual bright energy dimmed by shame and worry. The ancient dragon patriarch had spent hours considering their impossible situation. 300 years of careful isolation destroyed in minutes. Their greatest secret revealed to strangers. The protection of his family compromised forever. Yet as he watched So-min heal the wounded humans with such gentle compassion, Dae-ho found his anger slowly cooling. These were not enemies or invaders. They were refugees, desperate people fleeing from something terrible. His son had seen their need and acted with the old dragon values of honor and protection. Eun-by paced restlessly near the wall, her red scales bright with frustrated energy. Part of her admired Jinwoo's courage, but she also understood their father's anger. They were exposed now, vulnerable to discovery by their ancient enemies. Everything their family had built could be lost. Taeyang sat surrounded by floating displays showing the battle above. His golden scales pulsed with concentration. As he analyzed the wreckage of the destroyed black ship, the technology was unlike anything in his vast knowledge. It seemed to combine machine precision with something darker, something that felt wrong even to dragon senses. Captain Hyeonsu cleared his throat respectfully. He had been waiting for the right moment to speak, understanding that he was a guest in a place no outsider had ever seen. The crystal city around them was more beautiful than any human artwork, clearly the creation of an ancient and sophisticated civilization. Great dragons, Hyeonsu began, his voice carrying the respect of a man who understood he owed his life to these magnificent beings. I am Captain Hyeonsu of the human colony ship Defiance. We are grateful beyond words for your son's brave rescue and your healing care. Dae-ho's great head turned toward the human captain. When he spoke, his voice rumbled like distant thunder through the crystal halls. You bring danger to our home, human. For 3 centuries we have lived in peace beneath these sands. Now that peace is broken. The other humans shifted nervously, but Hyeonsu stood firm. He had faced worse dangers than an angry dragon, though none quite so magnificent or intimidating. We did not seek to disturb your sanctuary, honored one. We were fleeing from the Void Swarm, and your world appeared uninhabited. The Void Swarm, Taeyang said suddenly, his golden eyes brightening with recognition. I have read references to them in the oldest archives. Machines that consume organic life, created by a long-dead race as weapons of war. Mi-young stepped forward, her newly healed arms strong and steady. The archives don't tell the whole story. The Void Swarm has been growing stronger for decades. They adapt to every weapon we use against them, learn from every battle. Entire star systems have fallen to their advance. So-min looked up from healing the last wounded human, her silver scales reflecting concern. How many worlds have been lost? Hundreds, Hyeonsu replied grimly, maybe thousands. They move through space like a plague, consuming everything in their path. Our colony ship was part of the last evacuation fleet from the Kepler sector. 47 ships started the journey. Only 3 made it to the next system. The weight of those words settled over the crystal hall like a dark cloud. Even Dae-ho's anger seemed small compared to the scope of such destruction. Jinwoo crept closer to his family, his blue scales dim with the horror of what he was hearing. Eun-by stopped pacing, her warrior instincts responding to the description of such a terrible enemy. What do these Void Swarm ships want? Why do they hunt organic life? We don't know for certain, Mi-young answered. Our scientists believe they were programmed to eliminate biological threats to their creators. But their creators have been dead for millennia. The machines just keep following their original orders. Taeyang's displays shifted to show star charts of the surrounding systems. Red marks indicated worlds that had fallen to the Void Swarm advance. The pattern was clear and terrifying. The mechanical army was moving steadily toward the galactic core, consuming everything in its path. At their current rate of expansion, the Golden Dragon calculated, they will reach the central systems within 50 years. Billions more lives will be lost, Hyeonsu nodded gravely. That's why we were seeking refuge in the Outer Rim territories. We hoped to find somewhere the Void Swarm hadn't reached yet, somewhere to rebuild and plan a resistance. And now you have found us? Dae-ho said quietly. The last dragons of Kethra, hidden like cowards beneath the sand while the galaxy burns above us. The accusation in his own words stung the ancient dragon more than he expected. His family had survived by avoiding conflict, by choosing safety over honor. But what good was survival if it meant abandoning all the values that made life worth living? So Min moved to stand beside her mate, her silver scales warm with understanding. She had seen the pain in his eyes as he wrestled with impossible choices. "What would you ask of us, Captain Hyansu?" The human captain took a deep breath, knowing that his next words would determine the fate of both their species. "Help us fight back. Your power, your ancient knowledge, your magic, combined with human determination and technology, we might have a chance." "You ask us to abandon 3 centuries of safety," Deho rumbled. "To risk our family, our children, in a war that may already be lost." "I ask you to be what dragons once were," Hyansu replied with quiet courage. "Protectors of the innocent. Guardians of life against the darkness. Your son showed us what dragon honor looks like when he saved my people. Now I'm asking if the rest of your family shares that honor." The challenge hung in the air like a sword waiting to fall. Yunbai's scales blazed brighter as her warrior heart responded to the call. Taeyang's mind raced through possibilities and strategies. Jinwoo looked between his parents with hope and fear warring in his young eyes. But it was So Min who spoke first, her gentle voice carrying the strength that had kept their family together through centuries of exile. "Show us," she said simply. "Show us the true scope of this war. Help us understand what we would be fighting for." Above them, hidden scanners detected new energy signatures approaching through space. More void swarm ships were coming, drawn by the battle and the strange readings from beneath the sand. Time was running out for decision and debate. The sanctuary that had protected House Rukin for 300 years was about to become a battleground, whether they chose to fight or not. The decision came when the mountain shook. Deep underground in their crystal sanctuary, the dragon family felt the impact of weapons striking the sand above. The void swarm had found them, and hiding was no longer possible. Deho stood in the center of the great hall, his bronze scales gleaming with determination. The ancient protection spells were failing under the constant bombardment. Cracks appeared in the crystal walls as energy beams penetrated deeper with each strike. "We fight," the Dragon Patriarch declared, his voice carrying the authority of 3 centuries. "Not just for these humans, but for every living being in the galaxy. The time for hiding has ended." Yunbai roared her approval, her red scales blazing like fire. Finally, her warrior training would serve a purpose greater than practice and preparation. Jinwoo bounced with excitement while Taeyang nodded thoughtfully, already planning strategies in his brilliant mind. So Min moved to the ancient weapon vaults, chambers that had been sealed since their arrival on Kethra. Her silver claws traced the opening runes as magical seals dissolved. Inside lay artifacts of incredible power, forged by dragon masters in the early days of their civilization. Captain Hyansu watched in amazement as the dragons prepared for war. Weapons that seemed made of crystallized starlight floated from their resting places. Armor that looked like liquid metal flowed over dragon scales. Ancient war songs echoed through the caverns as the family embraced their forgotten heritage. The first joint mission came sooner than anyone expected. A void swarm landing force broke through the sand directly above their hidden entrance. Black ships disgorged. Mechanical soldiers that began digging toward the Crystal City with ruthless efficiency. Eun-Bai and Captain Hyansu led the counterattack. The Red Dragon burst from concealment with the human pilot Dong Hyan riding on her back. His fighter craft somehow merged with her natural flight abilities through dragon magic. Together they moved like one being. Fire and technology combined into something neither could achieve alone. The mechanical soldiers had never faced dragons before. Their programming struggled to classify threats that breathed fire and cast spells. While working alongside human warriors, Yunbai's flames melted their armor while Dong Hyan's enhanced weapons found weak points with impossible precision. Below ground, Taeyang worked frantically with the human engineer Sujin to upgrade their weapons and defenses. His golden scales glowed brighter as he poured ancient knowledge into human technology. Weapons that had been barely effective against Void Swarm. Armor suddenly cut through their defenses like paper. The young engineer, Sujin, stared in wonder as dragon-forged materials bonded with human circuits. The combination created something entirely new, technology enhanced by magic in ways that pure science could never achieve. Her tools hummed with power that felt alive and purposeful. Even Jinwoo found his place in the battle. His small size and curiosity made him perfect for infiltration missions. The young dragon could slip into Void Swarm ships and disable their systems from within, his blue scales shimmering as he moved unseen through mechanical corridors. The first victory came after 3 days of continuous fighting. A Void Swarm patrol fleet arrived to investigate the loss of their landing force and found themselves facing enemies unlike anything in their databases. Dragon fire disrupted their shields while human tactics kept them off balance. Ni-young coordinated the battle from the Crystal Command Center, her healed arms steady as she directed both human and dragon forces. The tactical displays showed something unprecedented, Void Swarm ships retreating from a battle they could not understand or adapt to quickly enough, but victory came with revelation. Taeyang discovered something terrible in the wreckage of destroyed Void Swarm ships. Hidden deep in their programming were references to dragons, specific instructions for hunting and capturing dragon essence. These machines had been created specifically to eliminate his people, the Golden Dragon shared his discovery with growing horror. The Void Swarm was not just conquering worlds randomly. They were following an ancient map, seeking out worlds where dragons had once lived. Every planet they consumed had once been home to dragon colonies. So Min felt her heart grow cold as she understood the implication. They are not just destroying civilization, she whispered. They are finishing a genocide that began centuries ago. Captain Hyan-Su studied the ancient star charts that Taeyang displayed. The pattern was clear and terrifying. The Void Swarm's path through the galaxy followed old dragon trade routes and colony worlds. They were systematically eliminating every trace of dragon civilization. That is why they adapt so quickly to our weapons, Daeho realized. They were designed to fight dragons specifically. Our magic, our technology, our combat techniques, they have been programmed to counter all of it. The revelation changed everything. This was not just a war for survival, but a battle against extinction itself. The dragons had hidden for 3 centuries, thinking they were safe. Instead, they had only delayed the inevitable, but the combination of human and dragon forces had achieved something neither could do alone. The Void Swarm's adaptation programs failed. When faced with hybrid tactics that mixed magic and technology in unpredictable ways. For the first time in decades, the mechanical army had met enemies they could not easily overcome. Word of their victories spread through the surviving human colonies. Resistance groups that had been hiding began to emerge, inspired by news that someone was finally fighting back successfully. More refugees arrived at Kethera, seeking the protection of the Dragon Sanctuary. Eun-Bai found herself training human pilots in dragon combat techniques. Her fierce teaching methods produced warriors who could think like dragons while flying human ships. The combination created ace pilots who moved through space battles with grace and deadly precision. Taeyang established workshops where human engineers learned to work with dragon materials and magic. The Golden Dragon's patient teaching helped them understand principles that human science had never discovered. Soon they were producing weapons and shields that seemed to blur the line between technology and enchantment. Jinwoo became the unofficial ambassador between the species. His friendship with young humans like the engineer Na-Yoon helped bridge cultural gaps that centuries of separation had created. The Blue Dragon's enthusiasm and curiosity made him beloved by human children and respected by their parents. But even as their alliance grew stronger, the dragons knew they faced a terrible choice. Other dragon families remained hidden across the galaxy, unaware of the true nature of the Void Swarm threat. Revealing themselves to help would expose every surviving dragon to their ancient enemy. The sanctuary beneath the dunes had become the heart of a growing resistance. Human and dragon warriors trained together, learned from each other, and prepared for battles that would determine the fate of all organic life in the galaxy. Above them, the desert wind still whispered across red sand. But now it carried the sound of hope as well as danger, the promise of unity between species that had once seemed impossibly different. The discovery came through a combination that would have been impossible before the alliance. Taeyong's ancient knowledge merged with human computer analysis to decode the deepest levels of void swarm programming. What they found changed everything. They thought they knew about the war. Deep in the crystal laboratories beneath Kethra, the Golden Dragon worked alongside Myung and a team of human technicians. Captured void swarm data cores lay open before them, their mechanical minds exposed like books written in code and malice. Taeyong's scales dimmed as he read the ancient programming languages. His vast knowledge of dragon history helped him understand references that human computers could not translate. Slowly, piece by piece, a horrifying picture emerged from the data. The Void Swarm was not created to conquer the galaxy, Taeyong announced to the assembled alliance leaders. They were created to harvest a specific type of energy that exists only in worlds where dragons have lived. Dragon essence, the life force that powers our magic. Myung's face went pale as she studied the translated files. According to this data, the race that created the Void Swarm believed dragon essence was the key to immortality. They built these machines to hunt dragons to extinction and collect their life energy. Captain Hyensu felt sick as the implications became clear. That means every world they have destroyed, every billion lives they have taken, it was all to find and eliminate dragons. The other species were just casualties in a genocide campaign. So-Min's silver scales lost their warm glow as she absorbed the terrible truth. For 3 centuries, her family had believed they were hiding from general galactic conflicts. Instead, they had been the primary target all along. Every death, every destroyed world had been part of a campaign aimed specifically at dragons, but there was worse news to come. Taeyong's deeper analysis revealed the true scope of the ancient conspiracy. The dragon families had not simply gone into hiding when the persecution began. They had made a collective sacrifice to protect their scattered survivors. The great cloaking fields that hide dragon sanctuaries across the galaxy, Taeyong explained. With growing horror, they are powered by the life essence of dragons who volunteered to die. Thousands of our ancestors gave their lives to create protection for the survivors. Daeho felt the weight of centuries crash down upon him. Every day his family had lived in safety had been purchased with the sacrifice of his people. The protection. Spells were not just magic, they were monuments to dragon martyrs who had chosen death so that others might survive. Unbai's red scales blazed with fury as she understood what this meant. By revealing ourselves and fighting, we have exposed not just our family but every hidden dragon sanctuary in the galaxy. The Void Swarm can now track the cloaking field emanations back to their sources. Jinwoo huddled close to his mother, his usual bright energy dimmed by the magnitude of their situation. His brave rescue of the humans had started a chain of events that could lead to the extinction of his entire species. The weight of that responsibility was almost too much for the young dragon to bear. The Alliance Command Center fell silent as everyone processed the implications. Hidden across dozens of worlds, dragon families lived in peaceful ignorance of the approaching doom. Some sanctuaries held only a few individuals, others sheltered entire communities. All of them were now in mortal danger. Human reconnaissance. Ships brought increasingly dire reports. Void swarm fleets were changing course throughout the galaxy, converging on previously unknown locations. The mechanical hunters had detected the cloaking field fluctuations caused by the battle at Kethra and were using them to map every dragon hiding place. We have perhaps weeks before they reach the closest sanctuaries, Mi-young reported grimly. Months before they find the more distant ones. After that... She did not need to finish the sentence. Captain Hyensu studied the star charts showing Void Swarm fleet movements. The scope of the coordinated attack was staggering. Hundreds of machine fleets were moving simultaneously toward targets scattered across the galaxy. It was the final phase of a genocide that had been planned for centuries. Taeyang worked desperately to find some weakness in the Void Swarm programming, some way to disrupt their coordination or confuse their targeting systems. But the ancient machines were too well designed. Their creators had spent millennia planning the perfect dragon hunting algorithm. There may be a way, So-Min said quietly, her healing magic probing the captured data cores. But it would require a sacrifice greater than any our people have made before. The Silver Dragon's proposal was both brilliant and terrible. The cloaking fields protecting dragon sanctuaries were powered by life essence, but they could also be reversed. Instead of hiding dragon signatures, they could be turned into weapons that would disrupt void swarm systems on a galactic scale. The transformation would require willing participation from dragons across the galaxy, So-Min explained. Not death, but a sharing of life force on a scale never attempted before. Every dragon sanctuary would need to contribute their essence to create a pulse that would rewrite void swarm programming permanently. Daeho understood immediately what his mate was suggesting. It was a gamble that could save the galaxy or doom every remaining dragon to a fate worse than death. Failure would leave them powerless, easy prey for the mechanical hunters. We would need to contact every hidden sanctuary, the bronze dragon mused. Convince them to trust strangers with their most guarded secrets. Ask them to risk everything on the word of dragons who have broken 3 centuries of isolation. Unbai stepped forward, her warrior's heart ready for any challenge. Then we send messengers to every sanctuary, dragon volunteers who can reach their hidden brothers and sisters before the void swarm arrives. Jinwoo surprised everyone by volunteering immediately. The young dragon who had started this crisis by saving human refugees now wanted to help save every dragon in the galaxy. His courage inspired others to step forward. Despite the enormous risks involved, the plan that emerged was desperate but possible. Dragon messengers would race across the galaxy, using their natural speed and the Alliance's captured void swarm ships to reach sanctuaries before the machine fleets arrived. They would carry So-Min's instructions for the great ritual and plea for unity from House Rukin. Meanwhile, the human forces would attempt to slow down the void swarm advance, buying precious time for the messengers to complete their mission. It was a race against extinction itself, with the fate of 2 species hanging in the balance. As the crystal caverns filled with urgent preparation, Daeho looked around at his family and their human allies working together. 300 years of isolation had ended in a matter of days, replaced by bonds forged in desperate battle and shared sacrifice. The sanctuary beneath the dunes had become the command center for the most important military operation in galactic history. Success would mean survival and freedom for dragons and humans alike. Failure would mean the end of organic life in their corner of the universe. Above them, the desert wind carried the scent of distant stars and the promise of either redemption or doom. Time was running out, and the final battle for the galaxy was about to begin. The galaxy held its breath as dragon messengers raced through space toward hidden sanctuaries. Jinwoo led one of the fastest teams, his blue scales shimmering with determination as he piloted a captured void swarm ship toward the Andara system. Behind him, the young human engineer Nayun worked frantically to modify their communications array. Across dozens of star systems, similar scenes played out. Dragon volunteers pushed their ships to maximum speed while human allies provided technical support and tactical coordination. Every minute counted as the mechanical death fleets closed in on their targets. At Kethera, the Crystal Command Center had become the heart of the largest coordinated operation in recorded history. Daeho stood before a massive display showing the positions of dragon sanctuaries, messenger ships, and approaching void swarm fleets. The bronze dragon's amber eyes tracked hundreds of moving points, each one representing lives hanging in the balance. Messenger Team 7 has reached the Kepler Sanctuary, Mi Young reported from her tactical station. They are beginning the persuasion protocols now. Captain Hyan-Su coordinated the human fleets that were desperately trying to slow the void swarm advance. His forces struck at machine patrols and supply lines, drawing attention away from the messenger missions. Every battle bought precious time. Even though victory against the full Void Swarm was impossible, the responses from contacted sanctuaries varied wildly. Some dragon families, like the ancient House Silverwing of Proxima, immediately agreed to join the Great Ritual. Their patriarch had grown tired of hiding and welcomed the chance to strike back at their persecutors. Others were more reluctant. The young dragons of House Goldcrest had known only peace and safety. The idea of risking everything on an untested magical theory terrified them. It took all of Yunbai's diplomatic skills to convince them that hiding was no longer an option. The most heartbreaking responses came from sanctuaries that had already been discovered. Fragmentary messages spoke of desperate last stands of dragon families choosing to die fighting rather than flee again. Each lost sanctuary meant fewer voices in the coming ritual and less power to fuel their desperate gamble. Taeyang worked around the clock to refine Somin's ritual calculations. The Golden Dragon's brilliant mind processed input from dozens of dragon sanctuaries, adjusting the magical formulas to account for variations in sanctuary size, dragon age, and local magical conditions. One mistake could doom the entire operation. So Dashmin herself prepared for the most challenging magical working in dragon history. The silver dragon meditated in the deepest chambers of their crystal city, gathering her strength for a ritual that would either save their species or destroy it. Her healing magic would need to coordinate the life essence of every dragon in the galaxy. As the final preparations neared completion, the true scope of their undertaking became clear. Over 300 dragon sanctuaries had been contacted across 47 star systems. Nearly 2,000 dragons were preparing to link their life forces in a single, desperate gambit. The timing had to be perfect. The ritual would create a pulse of pure dragon essence that would propagate across the galaxy at faster than light speeds. When it reached the Void Swarm fleets, it would rewrite their base programming, turning mechanical hunters into protectors of organic life. But the pulse would also reveal the exact location of every participating dragon sanctuary. If the ritual failed, the survivors would be defenseless against immediate retaliation. There would be no second chances, no opportunity to retreat back into hiding. Jinwoo's voice crackled across the communication channels from the distant Vega system. All messenger teams report successful contact. The dragon families of the Outer Rim are ready to participate. We are standing by for the final signal. Captain Hyansu's human fleets had taken heavy casualties, drawing Void Swarm attention away from the sanctuaries. His ship Defiance was badly damaged, its hull scarred by energy weapons and its crew reduced to a skeleton team. But they had succeeded in buying the time needed for preparation. The moment of truth arrived as Void Swarm advance fleets reached the outer edges of the first dragon sanctuary systems. There was no more time for preparation or second thoughts. The ritual had to begin now or never. So Dashmin stood in the center of a vast ritual circle carved into the crystal floor of their deepest chamber. Her silver scales glowed with inner light as she began the ancient chants that would link her consciousness to every dragon in the galaxy. The magical energy was overwhelming, like trying to hold the power of a star in her mind. Across the galaxy, dragons began to sing. The ancient war songs that had once rallied their people to battle now served a different purpose. Each voice added to the growing chorus, each singer contributing their life essence to the great working. Daeho felt the ritual pull at his own life force and willingly gave what was needed. His bronze scales dimmed slightly as part of his essence joined the growing wave of power. Around him, his family did the same, their combined strength flowing into Somin's magical matrix. The pulse began as a whisper, barely detectable even to dragon senses. But it grew with each added voice, each shared portion of life essence. Soon, it blazed through space like a second sun, carrying the accumulated will and power of every dragon in the galaxy. When the pulse reached the first Void Swarm fleet, the effect was immediate and spectacular. The mechanical ships stopped their attack approach and began broadcasting new identification codes. their weapon systems powered down as their programming rewrote itself according to the Dragon Essence template. Across the galaxy, similar transformations occurred. Void swarm ships that had been instruments of genocide became protectors of the worlds they had been sent to destroy. The hunter-killer algorithms that had driven them for centuries were replaced by protocols dedicated to preserving and nurturing organic life. The great ritual succeeded beyond even Somin's most optimistic projections. Not only were the Void Swarm fleets neutralized, but their transformation was permanent. The mechanical ships began actively defending the worlds they encountered, their advanced technology now serving life rather than death, but victory came with a price. The dragons who participated in the ritual found their magical abilities greatly diminished. The life essence they had shared would slowly regenerate over decades, but they would never again possess the overwhelming power of their ancestors. Yet, as Deho looked around at his exhausted but triumphant family, he felt no regret. They had chosen unity over isolation, sacrifice over safety. The galaxy was free from the Void Swarm threat, and dragons could once again live openly among the stars. Jinwu was the first to suggest the new era's beginning. The young dragon proposed that dragons and humans work together to heal the worlds damaged by centuries of war. His friendship with Nayun had shown him how much stronger both species could be when united. The crystal caverns of Kethera became the meeting place for the first interspecies council. Dragon wisdom combined with human innovation to begin the long work of rebuilding civilization. Worlds that had been scarred by void swarm raids slowly bloomed again under careful tending. EUN-by established the first integrated military academies, where dragon and human warriors trained together. Her fierce teachings produced a new generation of defenders who understood that strength came from diversity and cooperation rather than dominance. Taeyong's workshops became centers of learning, where ancient dragon knowledge merged with human scientific methods. The technologies they developed seemed like magic to outside observers, but they were actually the natural result of two very different ways of understanding the universe working in harmony. Years later, as Deho stood on the surface of Kethera, watching dragons and humans play together under the twin moons, he reflected on the journey that had brought them to this point. His family had spent 3 centuries hiding beneath the sand, but they had emerged to help save the galaxy. The desert wind still whispered across the red dunes, but now it carried laughter and songs from a dozen different species. The sanctuary had become a symbol of hope, proof that even ancient enemies could become allies when they chose understanding over fear. Jinwu soared overhead with his human friends, his blue scales brilliant in the starlight. The young dragon who had once broken centuries of isolation now led expeditions to contact other species throughout the galaxy. His courage had started a chain of events that transformed the universe. Below them, the crystal city glowed with warm light, no longer hidden but proudly announcing its presence to any who wished to visit. The age of secrets and separation was over. The age of unity and hope had begun, written in fire and starlight across the vast canvas of space.